Good afternoon, everyone. I'm here again with the second part of the chapter and the last part as well, because this chapter is not that much lengthy as compared to the other chapters. In the previous chapter, we have discussed about history, the subcategories. In the categories, the history has been divided according to the ages, why it is necessary to study history, why dates are important in history, and how to calculate dates. Now we will be discussing the geographical framework, means how geography has played an important role in the history of India. And then we'll be moving to the sources of history as well, the archaeological and the literary sources. There is a video to teach you about these sources, and then we'll sum up. And then again, we will have the exercise questions related to the topics we are going to learn. So, here we are with the topic, the geographical framework. Geography has played an important role in the history of India. A large country like India has diverse geographical features which throw an impact on history. There are high mountains, hot deserts, fertile river valleys, and numerous reefs. Let us take instances of how these diverse geographical features throw an impact on history. The Himalayan mountains in the north, they act as a natural barrier between the India and Central Asia. The passes in these mountains have acted as routes of contact since ancient times. People like soldiers, merchants, traders, travelers, scholars, and others have often crossed these passes and traveled from one place to another. They have brought new ideas, habits, and customs that have made our culture richer. Now let us move to another instance, that is the river valleys. The Indus and the Ganga plains are very fertile regions. So is the valley of river Narmada. These river valleys were the areas where people settled first. This was because these river valleys were the areas which provided sufficient water for their needs. The region was quite fertile, which was suitable for growing crops, as well as the rivers found in these river valleys also served as a means of transport. Geography also determines the development seen in a particular area. For example, the places with unfavorable environment are sparsely populated. The culture that develops there is not much affected by external influences. On the other hand, areas where the environment is favorable are densely populated. A question must be arising in your mind, that why did people travel from one place to another in ancient times? In ancient times, farming was not that popular. The people used to hunt down animals and eat them. They were also dependent on fruits for their survival. So they traveled from one place to another in search of food, also in search of comfortable climate as well. So Let us move to the next topic, that is sources of history. There's a video for showing you about the source of history. Many things have been discussed over here also, which are somehow apart from your book. Some extra information might help you. When it comes to sources of history, a question which arises in our mind is, how do we find out about something that took place thousands of years ago? We learn about it from the remains which people of that time have left behind. As we have discussed earlier also, that archaeologists and historians study these remains and tell us what might have happened in the past. The work of an archaeologist and a historian is similar to that of a detective. Just as a detective solves a mystery with the help of clues, archaeologists and historians solve the mystery of the past with the help of historical clues. They look at the clues such as a piece of writing, a wall painting, or even some broken pots. From these, they slowly put together the history of the period. These clues are the sources of history. And these sources can be divided into two types, that is archaeological and literary sources. See the video first, then I'll explain about the archaeological and the literary sources.
In this module, you will learn about the study of various types of historical sources and its importance in the construction of history. Historical sources are the foundation to understand a particular era back in time. They help us to gain knowledge about important events, inventions, cultures, civilizations, and many other aspects about society. They serve as evidence in the construction of history. Let us take a look at some of the historical sources of history. Literary sources are original sources of information in the form of documents or recordings created in the past. There are two kinds of literary sources of history: native literature and foreign literature. Native literature is the literature produced by the indigenous people of a given era. Some examples of native literature of India are Vishak Dattas, Mudra Rakshas, Kalhanas, Rajtarargini, Ashwaghosha's Buddha Charitra, Kautilya's Arthashastra, Amogh Varsha's Kavi Rajamarga, and the Tripitakas of Buddhist literature. Foreign literature refers to the writings of foreign visitors, explorers, and scholars. Some examples of foreign literary sources are Megasthenes Indica, Huan Sang's Siyuki, Fa Hein's Fu Ko Ki, Ceylon's Deepvansh, and Mahavansh. The writings of Farneo Nunes, who visited the Vijayanagar Empire, and the writings of Domingos Pais, Duarte Barbosa, and Niccolo di Conti. Archaeological sources of history are the artifacts like inscriptions, coins, monuments, pots and pans that have been obtained during archaeological excavations. Let us learn about inscriptions, coins, and monuments. Inscriptions provides us with information about the religion, culture, administration, economy, and other aspects of a given place during that period. The earliest inscription found in India was written by the Mauryan Emperor, Ashoka. These inscriptions were engraved on rock edicts, slabs, and stone pillars. Some of these edicts have been found in Maski in Raichur district and Brahmagiri in the Chitradurga district of Karnataka. The inscriptions found in India are mostly in the Brahmi script and the Prakrit language. The Halmidi inscription is believed to be the first inscription available in the Kannada language. Numismatics is the study of the evolution, nature, and development of coins. Early coins have been minted by using a variety of metals. A study of these coins helped gain knowledge about the minting technologies used, as well as the religious, economic, administrative, and social aspects. They help us to know about the important rulers or famous personalities of that era from the images on the coins. Stupas, basadis, or Jain temples, palaces, and fort ruins are the kinds of monuments which exist today. These monuments enable us to know about the unique architectural designs and technological, social, religious, political, and economic conditions of that period. They reflect the achievements of kings and administrators. Ashoka's pillars, Ajanta and Ellora caves, the Elephanta caves, Badami, Aihole, and Pattadakal of Karnataka are evidences of India's glorious heritage. A legend is a story from the past that is believed by many people but cannot be proved to be true. Legends are also referred to as Sthala Puranas. There are many legends about individuals, events, and customs of the past, which have been passed down the ages. Although legends do not provide direct information relating to an event, they reflect the social beliefs which prevailed in the society. Let us now recap all the important points that we have covered in this module on sources of history.
So, as you guys have seen the video in which it is quietly explained well about the sources of history, here is what given in your book. The sources of history has been divided into two categories, that is the archaeological and literary sources. The archaeological sources are direct evidences. They cannot be changed or altered by human beings. They are of four types: inscriptions, monuments, artifacts, coins. Let us discuss these four first, then we'll move on to literary sources. So, inscriptions are the written records engraved on rocks, cave walls, metal pillars, walls of temples and palaces, and on clay and copper tablets. Very often, kings got the important events in their reign and their achievements inscribed so that people could read them. The inscriptions also provide detailed religious practices during the ancient period. For example, as you have seen in the video, Emperor Ashoka of the Mauryan dynasty put up a large number of inscriptions, and they are in total 33 in numbers. Moving on to the monuments, they are buildings of historical importance. They tell us about the period in which they were built. They inform us about the social life, religious life, religious beliefs, the culture, and the knowledge of science of the people of that period. For example, temple, forts, palaces, stupas, monasteries. Moving on to the artifacts. The objects made by humans in the past, such as pottery, tools, ornaments, jewelry, metal objects, they were called artifacts. They are found by archaeologists in the source in the course of excavations. They give us vital clues to the past. Moving on to the last one, coins. Coins are extremely valuable source of information. They tell us about the reigning period of the kings, the economy of the kingdom, the extent of king's empire, trade with other regions during the past, the art and the religion of earlier times. Moving on to the literary sources, it has been subdivided into two categories: religious literature and secular literature. When it comes to literary sources, there were manuscripts that time. There were no machines. People used to write the events, whatever occurred during that time, with hands. So, handwritten records of the past were there, and the handwritten records which were written during earlier period in forms of book are called manuscripts. We have discussed earlier also that people used to write on certain materials like palm leaves, on the barks of birch trees. So these manuscripts were usually written on palm leaves and the barks of birch trees. Due to their fragile nature, many manuscripts have been destroyed, and those that have survived have helped us to know more about the past. Moving on to, they are of two types, religious and secular. The religious literature, their writings deal with religion. Many books are based on religious themes. For example, the Vedas, the Puranas, the Gita, the Ramayana, the Mahabharata, and etc. The secular literature, these writings were not religious. These include stories, poems, plays, biographies of kings, accounts of foreign travelers, and books on politics and science. For example, Arthashastra, written by Kautilya, Indica by Megasthenes, accounts of Fayan and Hunsang, and the Sangam literature as well. We have got certain keywords in this series, and I think you must have been thinking over the keywords, those keywords also. The first keyword which we got is excavation. Excavation means digging in search of something that has been buried for a very long time. The next one, artifacts, something made by people like tools or weapons, etc., of historical importance. The next one is biography. Biography is a history of a person's life written by someone else. So it is now the time to learn whatever we have discussed in our last series. We'll discuss the question answers, and these exercises are totally from the book. The very first one, choose the correct answer. The dash act as a natural barrier between India and Central Asia. Vindhya Range, Satpura, Himalayas, Aravalli Range. And the correct option is C, Himalayas. We have discussed earlier also. The Himalayas are a natural barrier between India and Central Asia. They are located to the north of the Indian subcontinent. They protect our country from the dry and cold winds of the Central Asia. Moving on to the next question. Inscriptions, monuments, artifacts, and coins are examples of dash sources: archaeological, literary, oral, recent. And the correct answer is option A, archaeological. The explanation to this one is sources can be divided into archaeological sources and literary sources. Archaeological sources include artifacts, monuments, coins, inscriptions. We have already discussed. Moving on to the next one, fill in the blanks. This was the only fill up which was left in the book. We have done the other in the first part. Dash has played an important role in the history of India. We have discussed it. That geography has played an important role in the history of India. Moving on to short answers for the question, how have Himalayas helped in shaping the history of India? So the Himalayas helped in shaping the history of India in the following ways: act as a natural barrier between India and Central Asia. The passes in these mountains have acted as routes of contact since ancient times. The passes in these mountains have acted as routes of contact since ancient times. And the last one, they have brought new ideas, habits, and customs that have made our culture richer. The next one, how is the work of an archaeologist and a historian similar to that of a detective? We have already discussed, because they solve the mystery of the past with the help of historical clues. The clues they use are a piece of writing, a wall painting, or even broken pots. Then they slowly put together the history of the period, and in this way they find out the mystery of the past. Moving on to the long answer type questions. Why did people first settle near river valleys? We already discussed that people used to settle near the valleys of Indus River, Narmada River, and Ganga River. And why is what it was so? Because these river valleys were the areas where people settled first. The rivers provided sufficient water for their needs. These were fertile regions to grow crops, and the rivers also served as means of transport. Moving on to the next one. What are inscriptions? How do they help us know about ancient India? So inscriptions are written records. They are engraved on rocks, cave walls, metal pillars, walls of temples and palaces, and on clay and copper tablets. They help us by providing valuable historical evidence of existence and activities of early kings and empires, and providing detailed religious practices during the ancient period. How are coins valuable? Source of information about ancient India. We have discussed earlier also this one, because they tell us about the reigning periods of the kings, the economy of the kingdom, the extent of the king's empire, trade with other regions during the past, the art and the religion of earlier times. The next one and the last one for the long answer type question is, you have to write a short note on secular literature. Writings which are not religious are called secular literature. These include stories, poems, plays, biographies of kings, accounts of foreign travelers, and books on politics and science. Examples we have already discussed. The last one, Hort's question, which is in the book. Pottery is one of the most common finds on an excavation site. Why? Earlier, people had a passion of making pots in order to preserve their things like grains, water, etc. That is why pottery is one of the most common findings on an excavation site. And the last one, why do you think rulers in ancient times recorded their victories on hard surfaces like rocks and pillars? Because they were as a proof that the kings had won many battles. Writings on hard surfaces are very clean and legible, offers much resistance to wear and tear if saved properly, and to let records last longer. This was the end of the session. We'll come back soon with a new video series, and the next topic which we will be discussing is the Earth and the solar system. The videos will be uploaded by tomorrow. Thank you and have a nice day.